like let's say video lengths are effective. That 1 minute video might be effective for the person who's scrolling at six in the morning getting ready for
Yeah.
work. The 10-minute video that you put out might be effective for the person at 4 o'clock who's this is now their time for research or their time for education.
Hello,
So,
writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
and I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 157 of the podcast. And it is May 22nd, 2024, as we record this. Today, we're talking about how to reuse our content in other ways for marketing purposes. And first, we want to thank our existing patrons for believing in our work offline and also here on the podcast. You can become a patron of the arts and of us at patreon.com/Valerie Isan or patreon.com/Strange Air Stories. There's a lot of goodies in both of those pages, so go check those out. Announcements. I'm teaching a class right now that is in the second week. So you could still slip in if you wanted. It's a 6-week long class on exploring imagery in creative nonfiction using the senses. And that is a live in-person and virtual class you can go to wordcrafters.org and check it out. I also have a new book, Focus and Finish, Goal Setting and Strategic Planning for Writers. That's on my website, and it's also free as an ebook anywhere ebooks are sold. Workbook will be coming in the future on that one, but right now it's just an ebook. And my writing how-to book is out, print and ebook in all the stores. And our 2024 Writer Craft Writing Retreat and Workshop registration is open and live. And we did open that up to non-writers as well, because the theme is aligned action. And I think that a lot of the workshops that I'm teaching have strong connection to it works for all people. We'll just leave it
Right.
at that. You don't have to be an author to appreciate the workshops that'll be at the retreat. And who doesn't need a retreat? I mean, it's awesome there.
Sounds glorious.
You want to talk about your submissions? Your
Yeah, so next month, I guess it is next month is June. I'm teaching a class on submissions for, I think it's the Garden Home Library Group. There's a Garden Home Library Group in Beaverton, east, kind of west suburbs of Portland, and they have a writers group, and I'll be teaching a class on submissions there. I'll have more details on that as they put the link up.
okay.
But it should be fun. You know, if you're not familiar, your local library probably has. I think we've talked about this before, actually. Yeah, your local writers, your local library probably has a writers group somewhere, and that writers group offers classes and support if you're looking for somewhere to start. So I've found a really good found it's a really nice, fun community to be a part of. And if you're so wherever your local library is, maybe just go and ask their programmer if they have something they offer writers and see if you can join.
And then you want to say anything about Caretaker Press?
Caretaker Press is still taking submissions. It's been a while since I've been on here, so I'm getting back into the groove of like, oh, right, you're supposed to say all the stuff. Caretaker Press still taking submissions. We were going to close down submissions, but as of a couple of weeks ago, I just met some people at conferences who said they'd spread the word. And so we're going to probably stay open through the end of the month, crossing fingers.
Through the end of
And
May?
in the end of May,
Okay.
probably stay open till then. And then yeah, I've started reading. Um, I actually like cracked the seal. My partner is a little ahead of me in the reading list. So I get texts from him that say, "Ooh, I don't know," or "Hey, get ready for this one," and which is it motivates me because now I kind of want to get ahead of him because the anticipation can really if I don't get to read that story, he's excited about it. Kind of throws me off. But
That's what you're
yeah,
thinking
so
of while you're reading the one you're on.
right, I'm reading the 10th story in line, and he's reading the 15th, and I'm thinking like, stop, stop. You're making me like, you're making me anxious. But yeah, it's been interesting. Like, I've read I think 12 submissions, and it's interesting.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that that's working out for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you want to transition into author update? I know you talked about the class you were going to start teaching. When is that happening? Do you know
I
yet?
think it's June 25th. I turned my head to look for a calendar. I think it's the 25th. It's like a Tuesday in one of the last Tuesdays in June. Um, I'll get more details on that for next time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe it's virtual and in person, but as far as author updates goes, like, yeah, I don't know. I've launched um, Black Springs that came out since we last talked.
Black
That
Springs
book is
meaning what?
the Black Springs Saga
That's the
book
new
series.
series. Mm-hmm.
That's the
Okay.
new series that's out. I have the next book written. I'm kind of waiting to do a pre-release. I'll probably start the pre-release on that in June. Um, and what else? Yeah, not much. I went camping with my son this weekend. We went to a Cub Scout camp,
Mm-hmm.
and which was really fun. I like sometimes I like being the fish out of water. And so it was fun to be like around a bunch of kind of people I'm just not around a lot, and just learned a lot about what the Cub Scouts are about, and just that whole experience was pretty fun. Um, but it actually like got me started. I've had this sort of idea noodling around in my head for years. Um, about a camp host, like the guy, the man
Mm-hmm.
or woman who lives at the camp. Yeah, I've always had this like idea of like that would be a fun character to play with, the camp host. Like what could well, as I'm sitting there during, jamboree time on Saturday night, and kind of watching these Cub Scout skits, I started writing this story like, oh, well, this could go like this. And what if is like this? And then by the time Jamboree was over and all their skits were done, I had basically like plotted an entire. Um, I started writing a television pilot based on this idea over this last week,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it was good. I need a sample. I need like at the very worst, I need a sample for my site, just something people can download and look at before they hire me. Um, but also like the idea is really good. It's comedic horror, and I always like comedic horror, kind of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil or Cabin in the Woods, that kind of thing. So yeah, honestly, I sat there during the fire and was watching these skits, and I kept thinking like, yeah, the camp host could do this, the camp host could do that, and what if this was in the woods while the camp host was doing those things? So yeah, stay tuned. And I'm actually almost done writing it. I've just been doing nothing but writing that the last 2 days. So,
That's
um,
awesome. Your brain is
first
just
draft,
like this idea generator.
first. Well, it was all there, Val. I mean, it was all there. I'm like, every time I turned around, because the part of the camp idea, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but like part of the camp idea was you have these Cub Scouts and you're kind of exposing them to the world of the Boy Scouts. So like we were always like interacting with the neighboring camp where the Boy Scouts were. And it was very much about aspiration. Like here's what these boys are doing and here's what they're going to attain. And man, everything about that Boy Scout camp was like ripe for a TV or was ripe for a comic horror story. Um, and I met some really interesting people that were like very, very it got me going in the character mode. So yeah, it was really hard not to. And the whole tired drive home, as my kid is like sleeping in the back of the truck, and I'm driving kind of through no cell phone zone. I'm like, well, I've basically written the entire thing in my head. It would be silly not to sit down and write it now. So we'll see.
Um, I am well, like I said, I started teaching this new class, so that's
Cool.
kind of on my brain. And we were talking before recording about the overhead tax of tasks and projects. So I spend a lot of time thinking about this class and prepping for this class and writing lesson plans and finding writing samples and that sort of thing. And so more on that in the meat of the topic for today. My sister, Leslie, and one of my nieces are going to be visiting next week. So my husband and I have been doing a lot of like house cleaning and clear out this room full of boxes so we can put a bed in it kind of thing. So a lot of our housework and small house projects are getting ramped up, and we're trying to frantically get those things done before she arrives next Tuesday. What else is happening? I'm in a mastermind group right now. It's almost over. It was a 6-week program. And yesterday was my hot seat question that I brought to the table. And so I got some ideas about marketing and yeah. And I also met with my life coach yesterday morning, and we also talked about doing some like making my website a little bit more streamlined and set it up more for reaching those coaching clients, which I feel like I want to do more coaching if possible. I love talking story, and anybody that wants, story diagnostic, I am happy to do that. That's super fun for me. But as we were talking about before we hit record, we're also talking about the clients that do show up that have started writing books, at some point need help finishing them or need inspiration to keep going, and so I think that book coaching really can help with that. So yeah, just kind of tweaking the website. I really like my website. I think it's pretty rad. So if you want to check out, give me feedback on my website, you can go to ValerieIhsan.com, and Ihsan is IHSAN. So yeah, I like it. I just think it's a little bit cluttered, so I just want to like streamline it just a little bit more.
Boy, I've
And
gotten that advice recently.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
happening. I'm looking at my planner right now to see like what else is coming up. And my dog has a dentist appointment tomorrow morning. I'm so afraid I'm going to forget it. It's one of those, where you have to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and drop them off, and then you pick them up later sometime at 3:30 or whatever. But
Yep.
I'm just afraid that I'm going to forget to drop him off or forget and feed him, and then he can't have his surgery, so
Yep.
I'm afraid I'll forget about that. All right. Well, I wanted to ask you, you were talking about comedic horror. Speaking
Yeah.
of comedic horror, have you actually read yet anything by Grady Hendrix?
Is that How to Sell a Haunted House?
That's one of them. My Best Friend's Exorcism, The Southern Woman's Guide to Slaying Vampires, or,
Yeah. I started How to Sell a Haunted House as an audiobook, and
mhm.
I lost steam with it because as I'm learning that like that audiobook narrator is another layer in the of like if the audiobook narrator doesn't work, then I'm not into it.
Right.
I didn't get through Three Body Problem as an audiobook, which is, a fantastic read apparently because yeah. So I have a print copy. I will probably pick up the print copy to read it because I liked the story. I just couldn't get into the reader.
Yeah, the story, I mean, as I was reading it, even, I was thinking of you, like, oh, this is so creepy. And I just
I
figured you would
love that you
like it.
think of me when you read creepy things. That makes me feel good.
So yeah, and I just saw we're carrying a couple of his books at the bookstore too. So that's another thing too. I just started working at the bookstore again 2 days a week. This month I just started it. So I'm once again trying to like figure out how my author business at home office fits in and works, and how to like squish that into 3 days a week instead of five, and
Right.
when I'm doing things and what I have to let go of, because 5 days of stuff doesn't fit into 3 days of stuff. So
No, it absolutely doesn't.
it doesn't. And that segues nicely into, I just finished reading Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. And so that was not, I for me, it was not like a mind-blowing book. It wasn't like brand new. I mean, it was some, oh, I haven't thought of it in this way. And oh my God, you're so right. And wow, this affects me because of this and this and this. So that was kind of my response to that book. It wasn't like, here's a new thought totally entirely, but it was
Yeah.
validating, and yeah, I think I want to restructure how I do my job here at home, because I do really fall into that loop of busy work. And
Yeah.
Cal Newport calls it pseudo productivity, which totally is accurate. I mean, as soon as you hear the word, you know exactly what that means.
Yep. Yep.
I'm see how busy I am. See how you know,
Yeah.
you're not really actually doing a lot.
Yeah, it's
Anyway.
funny because I was at that Cub Scout camp, and three or four of the guys, the dads, like sort of den pack leaders, were they're electricians. And it was funny because they were talking about all the ways that they sort of like kill time on the job to avoid work. Um, and one of them was like, "Well, you don't do that. You work for yourself." And when I heard that, I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And then as the day went on, I kept like, "No, actually, there's a lot of things I do that probably constitute, the same thing as like killing time or like pseudo busy."
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I just finished reading that last night in bed before I went to sleep. So I'm gonna pick back up Crow Talk by Eileen Garvin. It's an arc. I don't know if it's out yet, because often I will get arcs and then they stay on my, to be read pile. And sometimes by the time I pick them up and start reading them, they're already released. But
Right, right, right.
so Crow Talk is what I picked up. Um, the day I was homesick in bed was the day I picked that up. And then I don't know. When I'm sick, it's hard I flitted around between different books when I was sick.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to pick that one back up. So that will be my main focus book. And I'm still reading Essays at a Thunder Song by Sasha
Mhm.
LaPointe. What
I don't
about you?
really
What are
know
you
what
reading?
I don't know what I'm reading, and that's not a joke. Like I have like five. I have had like five books half read or throughout the house. Like um, I've got my werewolf anthology that I'm two-thirds of the way through. I've got a book that I picked up from my board about Bill Porter, who was a developmentally disabled salesman in Portland, very famous Portland person. Like that's half finished. I've got a book downstairs, How to Survive a Garden Gnome Attack. No joke. Downstairs, it's on the table, and I'm halfway through it. I've also got a graphic novel called Homicide, which is the basis for the show The Wire, which is one of my favorite shows. That's half finished. So my sort of reading plan for the next week is to like finish all the half finished books that are floating around the house
You
so I
sound like
can
me, Eric. This happens to me like at least once a year, sometimes twice. I'm
the,
just
the most
at the end of it. I'm pulling all of the same. Got
yeah.
to finish Crow Talk. Got to finish Thunder Song.
I was determined. I've just finished One Tough Mother, who's it's the memoir by Gert Boyle, who was the president and then chairperson for Columbia Sportswear. That I read that for work. Um, but other than that, yeah, I've just been like determined to sort of finish the half finished things. Um, that's kind of hard to do because
Yeah.
all of it's just like this was sitting here for a reason. Um, but I picked up the Garden Gnome book, just an FYI, because I did a conference as a volunteer for a guy named Chuck Sambucino, who does these conferences. He does many, many conferences throughout the United States, writers' conferences. And that was one of his books. He wrote a book called How to Survive a Garden Gnome Attack. And I thought, I'm going to read this. And it's funny.
All
So
right. Well, let's get into the meat of the topic.
let's talk about it.
Yeah. So reusing content. So both of us are creating workshops right now. We're both either prepping for our classes or we've already started teaching our classes. I am going to reuse that content because I've got 6 weeks, and each class is 2 hours long. So I've got 12 hours of content. A large part of that in this particular class is writing and like exercises. So if I take that part out, I still will have well over 6 hours of content that I can reuse in different ways for marketing purposes and also just content for my audience. So one of the ways I'm planning on doing it is at the retreat. One of the 4 workshops that I'm going to teach at the retreat will be on a section. It'll basically be one of these classes, maybe
Right.
obviously in a condensed shortened version. So I'll just pick one of the 6 weeks and be like, all right, I'm going to teach about that one. And that's going to be at the retreat. So reusing that. When I pitch conferences, I can certainly, reuse any of those. So that gives me 6 classes practically, maybe let's say 5, because the last one is kind of more like a critique group, I guess. So let's say 5. I have 5 classes now that I can pitch to conferences or like writing organization chapter meetings. What else can I use it for?
Well,
Even the marketing for the classes, I can reuse too. We were talking
right.
about how to create reels for Instagram, little bite-sized pieces. So even if I haven't recorded because the classes that I taught last week and that I'm going to continue teaching, I haven't recorded any of them. I don't know how I feel about that because it is kind of conversational, instead of like I'm standing up here and talking for 45 minutes. It's not like that. So I didn't really know how I was going to be able to use that or just the permission to use it, reuse it.
Right.
So, but that is a way you could reuse content to record it and take little bite-sized pieces out and create reels or whatever. So there's some ideas. I've got lots more, but you talk now.
Well, I think that the idea that, how we got started on this is that it's single use is not single use anything is labor creates more labor than than it should, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
create you know, I'm learning, I have, or I've been directed toward the focus of like not just creating a blog, for example, that serves a purpose on my website, but then how do you take that and repurpose it for as much, extra content as possible, right? It's not just a blog, it's talking points for a video, it's subject matter that you and I can talk about. Um, it's marketing material to use for the site, outside the site. I mean, theoretically, your blogs are marketing material for the site as well. But like, if we think in the terms of single use, then I just think you just end up creating so much more content than um so much more work than you really have to do. One of the things my marketer has said is I've always kept author business and ghostwriting business separate. And on one hand, as an author, I don't think it benefits me at all to be a ghostwriter. I don't think anybody's going to say, "Ooh, I'm going to buy this book because the person is also a ghostwriter."
Mm-hmm.
Um, but by not taking the things I do as an author and using those as a ghostwriter, I'm missing out on an opportunity because a ghostwriter, a ghostwriting client or editorial client is very interested in the fact that I publish books, I publish stories. Um, those two things do work well together. So it's this like, I think that stopping and thinking about the purpose of the work you do and really being open to there being more to it than just simply clicking the box that the blog is done. Now what do I do for video or where I think it's just it's really wise to try to link those things up and make them connected so that they're kind of everything's working together. And that's how I think you come up with a harmonious message in your branding and your marketing and your web presence is that if everything is sort of if people see the same message from you in many different ways, then you become the authority of that for that question, that message that they're, the answer to the question people are seeking.
I always worried about, okay, for instance, what you just said, on a small scale where I'm not putting any extra effort into this at all. I repurposed this podcast episode because we record it on Zoom. So I put up the video in YouTube. So I'm getting the market from people who listen to the podcast. I'm getting the other market of people who watch video only. And then I post it on my Patreon page and on my website, because that's where I direct people to go listen to the podcast episodes if they don't have a podcatcher. I listen to all my stuff on Apple Podcasts, but if you're just a solo, like, oh, this is my favorite author, I'm going to go listen to the interview that he told me about on this one website, then they can go to my website. So that drives traffic to my website. And then I also posted on a couple of social media places too. Not all the time, but that can become a new system. I should systematize that a little bit more so that I do post it on various. Sometimes I post it on LinkedIn. Sometimes I post it on Facebook. So it just sort of depends on how much time I have.
Right.
But then also a lot of people do like a roundup at the end of the month of like their most listened to podcasts or like the favorite podcast of the month or something like that. And they send that newsletter out to their mailing list. I also have a public newsletter, which is, I don't know if yours does this, but in ConvertKit, you have the option to like do this little toggle thing and it goes to, it's a public newsletter. Basically, you can send your newsletter, whatever you just wrote, and make it public so that other people can go to ConvertKit's, I think it's called Creator. I forget the name of it, but it's just a place where people can go and look at your newsletters. So some of them are public, some of them are not. They're just for my mailing list. But those are all places I can put the podcast without even thinking.
Yeah, I think that there's two things there that my mind goes to, and one is that like your potential audience is in a lot of different places, and it's hard to quantify. As you're creating your content, you're doing it your way. It's hard to quantify like where those people are exactly. I mean, it's only been this is funny to say out loud now, but like it's only been in the last year, like 6 months or this year, that I've realized that the number of people that I want to be connected to are on LinkedIn. Like I didn't give LinkedIn a second thought for a really long time. Now suddenly it's like developing strategy for reaching people at LinkedIn. But the point is like your people are your people are a lot of places. And so it's important to try, like you have to, your person who's, maybe looking for things in those public newsletters might not be on LinkedIn, and that person on LinkedIn might not be on Medium, and so on and
Right.
so
I
forth.
guess
So
that
all
was
those,
the point that I was trying to get at. Because
yeah,
when you were saying, I get nervous about putting things up and reposting content because I'm like, oh, they're going to see it. They're going to again and again and again, they're going to get bored of the same content. They're going to see that I don't have anything new, something like that. But But you're right. Like the people in LinkedIn are not on the public newsletter, and the people that listen to this podcast don't watch it on YouTube, so there
Right.
really isn't crossover. You're just providing content for other markets.
Right. And I guess, well, there is also the recognition that people are not, I mean, posting something once on social media isn't effective. They say you're supposed to hit people, you get the full range of behavior if somebody sees you 7 times. And
Hmm.
I think it's because think about it, like you're not always in the click space online, right? You might be waking up, getting your coffee, browsing social media for the morning news. You're not maybe going to click that podcast that you are genuinely interested in at 6:50 in the morning as you're making coffee, waiting for, the family to wake up. So like,
Hmm.
for example, it might be later in the day at 4 o'clock. This is you have your 2 hour window for you that you could click that point of marketing now is effective. Like, oh, so that's where the difference in like those different like let's say video lengths are effective. That 1 minute video might be effective for the person who's scrolling at six in the morning getting ready for
Yeah.
work. The 10-minute video that you put out might be effective for the person at 4 o'clock who's this is now their time for research or their time for education. So I think by being, I think we teeter into the topic of like be trying to be too many places at once, which is definitely a problem for a lot of creators is that everybody wants to be everywhere all at once. Um, but if you find the things that work for you and find the things that you do natively or that you can find help in doing, then be in those places and just understand it's going to take more than one hit for sure for people to like finally click on you. So, and
Yeah.
when they see you 10 times online talking about a very similar thing, if it's different content, if it's not the same ad over and over and over again, if it's like, hey, here's Val talking about how to get started on your book, and here's Val talking about the 10 books that she would read if she was going to try to start writing a memoir. And now all of a sudden, maybe they didn't engage in that content in the full way. Now they're like, wow, I've seen this Val person, who
Hmm.
I've seen her 10 times. She's talking about things that I'm into. Now I'm going to click on her because she's got authority. I think repetition is presence and repetition are a part of authority. We have to have authority as creators, otherwise people aren't going to believe in us. So by being around a lot, you know, keep showing up.
Yeah, keep showing up. And in closing, I think that a way that I'm going to start looking at reusing my content is to be more, I was going to say systematic, but even before that, just intentional. Like, okay, I have this piece of content that I have created. What can I do with this? How can I chop it up? How can I reuse it? And it's just like when you come up with story ideas or essay ideas, you've got this one event, you were at a camp out with your son, and all of these different ideas came to you, and you're repurposing the content of this experience, and you could write a thing about it for an essay for a magazine about camping with your son. You can write this short story. You can write, or you can do a video for your patrons. Like, just take the content that you have already and brainstorm where you can use it. And that's what I
Right.
think I'm going to start doing
Yeah.
from now on is like, okay, I have this thing. Where can I use it? How can I tweak it to use it in all of these places? And that's going
Right.
to be way more effective and efficient use of my time.
Yeah. And I think the longer I think about this kind of stuff, the more I find there's like richer ideas to, yeah, there's probably ideas I haven't even thought of. Like this
Hmm.
class that I'm teaching, you know, in June, my digital marketers like, this is great, like make sure you get a video of it and make sure you um we can break that video down, we can get the transcript of it, and it's so like it's sort of limitless in how you can, if you're thinking of creatively of how to use your time and your results. um yeah, there's probably more than you can even think of than we've even talked about.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hang up and do that.
That's funny.
No, I'm gonna start thinking about this all day. Content creation.
Oh
Part of
God,
our jobs now.
it's on. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for talking with me this
Absolutely.
week.
My pleasure.
And I'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye
Take
for
care.
now.